just wanted to test the volume. Is it okay this way or too loud? A little bit too loud? Okay. Thank you, David. I'm glad you can help. Thank you for being Bodhisattva. And also at home, or if you're wherever you're tuning in from online, if the volume is, after David adjusts this a little bit, let me know if it's still maybe too loud or too soft. So is this good?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. And yes, please do let me know online if it's off in some way. So we have to be inclusive of everyone here in the temple and at home. So welcome to this Wednesday night class on awakening joy. I lost track. I know it's our 5th theme, but we had an introductory class. So it's actually the 6th class, and then we have 10 themes altogether. So just to give you a sense, this is theme number 5 this evening on awakening joy. And it's part of a larger Buddhist mindfulness class that I'm offering these teachings on awakening joy that are directly from the Buddha's teachings on joy. And so this evening I would like to talk about the theme of integrity as it relates to awakening joy. And just to sort of offer a definition of integrity in the Buddhist sense, it just simply means living in alignment with our values, and that these values really lay the foundation for well-being and happiness in our lives. And so that's the link already right there with awakening joy, how integrity provides a direct link to our sense of either wellness or unwellness when we're in alignment with those values and live in integrity in our lives. So there's still a few coming in, so I just wanted to pause for a moment and maybe share that normally there is a reflection in the beginning, and then afterwards leading into a guided meditation on the theme of the evening, leading into stillness. So we have about half a reflection and then half a meditation. So as people are still settling in, just wanted to share that. And so the Buddha called this living in integrity by an interesting name. He said that living in integrity means the bliss of blamelessness. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. The bliss of blamelessness. I'll say more about that in a moment. And so when we live by this bliss of blamelessness, we really set a foundation for peace of mind and for an opportunity to liberate our heart through our practice. And the Buddha said that for one who leads a virtuous life, it is a natural law that remorse will not arise. And for one free from remorse, it is a natural law that gladness will arise. For one who is glad at heart, it is a natural law that joy will arise. And for one filled with joy, it is a natural law that happiness will arise. So in Buddhist terms, when this sort of theme of integrity is a little bit of a watered down version for Westerners. Really what this is all about is what in Buddhism is called the 5 precepts of non-harming, of not taking what hasn't been freely offered, of refraining from sexual conduct, lying, and then also from taking intoxicants to heedlessness, to the level of heedlessness. A lot of us Westerners, maybe because of our own religious upbringings, have sometimes difficulty with sort of following moral guidelines, so maybe integrity works a little bit better as a word. But it's just really important that going back all the way to Asia in the time of the Buddha, that the Buddha even said or offered the teachings on integrity prior to even recommending that one sit down in meditation. And he would often famously say, try sitting in meditation after a day of sexual misconduct, lying, intoxicating yourself, stealing from someone and so forth. And just he wanted to highlight in that way that it really is important to go by, if a moral code sounds too strong, like I said, I'm offering this word integrity, but that really lays the foundation of a life of non-harming and peacefulness in one's life. So he placed a very deep importance onto this theme of integrity. So, like he said, it all starts with a virtuous life. And I just wanted to add that this doesn't mean that one has to live a life purely as a saint, but rather that we can aim for a sense of ease that comes with having nothing to hide from ourselves or from others. And that, because if we have something to hide or act in ways that are not in alignment with our values, that is often accompanied by feelings of guilt and shame. And so Buddha called this feeling of having nothing to hide and being aligned with one's values the bliss of blamelessness. So that's really what that is referring to. And I think we can all relate that sometimes when we have acted in ways that are harmful towards ourselves or others, there's this sense of, ouch, I wish I hadn't done that. And then you might even ruminate in your thoughts, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I'm a terrible person. I wish this would have never happened. And so, yeah, that's the opposite of the bliss of blamelessness. And so just to be in touch with, in terms of our actions, do they lead to happiness or do they lead to suffering? So that's really a good gauge that one can apply for oneself. And so in one of the discourses, a discourse in Buddhism is basically just a teaching of the Buddha and the lifetime of the Buddha. So in one of the discourses, the Buddha speaks about 4 kinds of happiness that I wanted to highlight this evening. And I'm sure he spoke about other ways of being able to have happiness in one's life, but I thought these ones were interesting and they're also quite practical. So the first one is the happiness that comes from being free of debt. And I didn't actually read the discourse myself, but I have a sense that he wasn't just talking about being free of financial debt, that he might also have talked about sort of being free of a karmic debt. Like, for example, if we act in wholesome ways and skillful ways, that will then lead to more beneficial karma or positive karma. And if we act in unwholesome and unskillful ways, that probably will lead to being indebted in a sense to one's own behavior, to one's own negative behavior, that there's a consequence, and it could be sort of maybe compared with a debt. That's what I was thinking. I don't know if that's true, but I was just wanted to offer that as a possible addition to just financial debt, that he might have been talking about more than that. And then the second type of happiness that he spoke about in this discourse was the happiness that comes from being able to take care of loved ones. And I just wanted to say that I have really personally experienced that in these years. I have a very important Dharma sister, Buddhist practice sister in my life. She happens to be 91 now. And since COVID, I have sort of taken on some things for her that she no longer can do for herself, like grocery shopping or cleaning or whatever. And because she is such a bodhisattva, really such a great being that still continues to work on herself very, very actively. She's really a deep teacher for me. It just fills me with joy, not just to have our Buddhist conversations about practice, but also to be able to give to her in those ways. It feels, that it's very happiness producing. I feel like I'm able to be in the presence of really a great being, and it gives me a lot of joy. I feel very lucky about that, to have her in my life. And then the third type of happiness that the Buddha talked about is that the happiness that comes from being generous with those you don't know. And in this case, I was also thinking about a personal example. A few years ago, after I quit my sort of careers in social work and then several more years in special education, I just wanted to do something sort of laid back and still have contact with people. So I was looking for maybe just temporarily working in a cafe. Now I pictured myself working in a neighborhood cafe. Maybe there's even bookshelves, spiritual books, and real laid back, and maybe having conversations with people that come. But because I didn't have any experience in that field, working as a barista, the only job that I was able to get was at Starbucks. So, and not just Starbucks, but the one on Fifth Avenue and Robinson, which is sort of like Grant's Central Station. And I remember this one woman coming in every morning and ordering 5 shots of espresso, and I thought, wow. But anyway, so it was a very fast-paced environment, and I didn't last there long at all. But what I remember to this day is that as an employee, after every shift, you were able to order a drink, whatever size, and some kind of a goodie, a muffin or, whatever, something. And I always, because there were a lot of people coming in or being right outside that were either housing insecure or homeless, I always ordered a really large drink, some kind of coffee drink, I have to admit, and some kind of a sandwich, and just gave it to one of the homeless people. And over the months, I really made friends with, not really friends, but I really developed a relationship. And I remember to this day, the reason that I ended up there is just to be able to do that and to have these interactions. It felt so meaningful. And I'm not pointing this out to say, oh, look at me, I'm such a virtuous person. It's quite the contrary. I feel like they were actually my teachers, and it felt so special and meaningful to do that. It really, it was a meaningful part of my life for many reasons. So just wanted to share that as an example, how that can bring a lot of happiness, to being able to be generous for others. And I know at this temple there's a lot of opportunities like that offered, like the peanut butter and jelly program that David always talks about. If you've never done that, you might want to show up one night. I actually haven't done it myself. So, and then the fourth type of happiness that the Buddha talked about is this particular happiness that comes from what he called, like I said, the bliss of blamelessness. And he made a point of saying that this last one, this bliss of blamelessness, is the key to happiness, really. And he supposedly was heard to say that other sources of happiness, these other sources of happiness, are not a 16th as potent a source of well-being as this bliss of blamelessness. And I don't know how he came up with this number, but I think it's just to say that the bliss of blamelessness leads to so much more happiness than the other ones that I've just mentioned before. And so he also said that no matter how good you have it, no matter how wealthy you are, if you are out of alignment with your values, you won't be as happy as people that are aligned with their values. And that in every moment, how we behave, whether it's causing suffering or not, we're planting the seeds of either happiness or unhappiness. So I think that's really important to reflect on and to keep in mind. This doesn't even need to be a religious teaching. I think it's just a general teaching, a universal teaching that really, where you can really feel, oh yeah, this action I can feel good about, I can feel at ease about, and this other action, ooh, ouch, this really, created suffering in my mind, and I can certainly see this created dis-ease in the other person that was the recipient of this action. So the Buddha wanted us to be really mindful of the 4 ways we can notice whether we are sowing the seeds of happiness or unhappiness. And so we can sense that in these 4 different ways. And the first one is the feeling that we have in the moment we act or right after we act in a certain way, that will either be a source of happiness or unhappiness. And if we can practice mindfulness, on a daily basis, we can really get in touch with it. Like I just said, is this leading to happiness, or is this leading to a sense of suffering in myself or the other person that's the recipient of that action? And then we can also sense it in the response that the recipient will give us after we act towards them in a certain way, that also will either be a source of happiness or unhappiness. And I think we've all experienced that we've said something and either that person's nervous system can relax and they can say, oh yeah, that's right, or they get really angry and really frustrated. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we've done anything wrong, but there's this response back, and maybe we could have said it in a way so that they could be more open to receiving it. But I just want to highlight, sometimes no matter what we do or how we act, depending on the person's personality, it might still not change it. But in general, I think it's safe to say, if we phrase something skillfully, there will more likely be a positive reaction coming back. And if we're really unskillful about it or say it at the wrong time or in a very unkind way, that it's more likely that there will be a trigger caused in the other person. I think we've probably all experienced that in some way or another. And so then the third way that we can feel if we're either sowing seeds of happiness or unhappiness is the feeling of either ease or remorse when we recall the action later on. So maybe later on we reflect on our action. Again, there's this ouch moment. Oh, I wish I hadn't said that. There's this moment of suffering. Or we're really glad. Oh, I'm so glad I said it this way, and I wasn't able to just lash out in anger. I was able to pause and just come back and say it in a different way that's kind later on. We really feel the difference in happiness or suffering in those moments. And then also, depending on acting either skillfully or unskillfully, that there's a likelihood that we will act in a similar way in the future, because acting either skillfully or unskillfully creates a sort of habit energy. So it kind of puts us on a certain track. Lashing out in anger, we're probably more likely to lash out in anger again, and then it really gains momentum. Or we can really learn to just pause. And in that moment of reflection, there might be this little wise voice that says, okay, maybe I can phrase that a little bit differently. And then that will put us on the path of it becoming more likely that we act in skillful ways in the future. So just wanted to do a brief mini reflection on what I've shared so far. So if you feel comfortable just closing your eyes, it'll just be a 2-minute exercise maybe. Or if you're not comfortable, just maybe lowering your gaze, just to bring your attention more inwards. Connecting for a moment with your body, sitting here. Connecting with your breath in and out of the body. And then see if you can reflect on a time you maybe didn't act so skillfully. Maybe you sent an email in a moment of anger, or you used a mean tone with your partner or child. See what comes to mind. And then remember how it felt right after you acted in this way. What did it feel like inside? Was there a sense of ease or this moment of ouch, I wish I hadn't done that? How did that feel in your body? And then also, what was the response that you received from the person? Was there maybe resistance, defensiveness? Did the action start a conflict between the two of you? And And also, how does it feel right now, remembering the situation? Also, just a little reflection that I wanted to offer on this particular reflection so far that I've offered. So if you want to keep your eyes closed, that's perfectly fine, but you're also welcome to open them again, depending on how you feel. So just wanted to say that the likelihood of repeating the action, unless we practice mindfulness and learn from it, is greater because of our habit energy, like I already said. So kind of in summary, we can notice 4 ways that unskillful acts plant seeds, in which unskillful acts plant seeds of suffering. So one is not feeling good about the action during it or after it. The second is what comes back to us from the recipient. The third one, feeling poorly about the action when we recall it. And then the fourth one, the likelihood that we will repeat that action out of habit. And then switching to the good news of the evening, which is that whenever we act in a skillful way, we are sowing the seeds of happiness. So I wanted to do a similar exercise about that. So maybe I shouldn't have told you to open your eyes again. Now you can close them again if you wish. So we're going to shift it around a little bit. So this time, think about a time you were kind or compassionate or generous recently. And then remember how that felt in the moment you were moved to act in that way. And also, how did the energy feel that came back to you from the recipient of your action? How does it feel right now as you're recalling this? So it's just good to remember that the likelihood of you acting this way again in the future is greater because it feels good when you take that in. It becomes more likely that you will act in a similar way in the future and create a positive habit. So it's very important to take those things in. So again, in summary, the seeds of well-being are sown, 1, in each moment of the kind action. 2, in the positive resonance you feel in your being right after the action. 3, in the positive response by the recipient that comes back to you. And then 4, in the habit that gains momentum with each skillful action. And I see that some of you are taking notes, so if you can't write fast enough, I have some notes here that you can look over afterwards if you're interested. So, or of course you could go to the video as well, but I want to save you that if you just need to write down the lines, so it's all good. So every moment that we can remember I'm sowing either positive or negative seeds really has an impact on the choices that we make, to really consciously be aware. It really helps us to just make our mindfulness so much bigger, to be aware of that. Am I sowing negative seeds right now through these actions or these thoughts or my speech, or am I sowing unskillful or negative seeds, or am I sowing wholesome seeds? It's just good to be aware of that. And the key in that is really to slow down enough to consider whether we should send that angry email, whether we should send the send button. I feel like we probably all have done that in a moment of real heated anger. It's like, okay, I'm going to let them know and I'm going to send this email. I certainly have done that several times over and really regretted it later, especially if it was at night and then I look at my emails the next morning and I get this response, I'm like, oh my God, really? I've been practicing now for 20 years and I really sent this email, but yes. And so then in those moments to really just remember to be kind and compassionate, and as best as one can not to be self-critical. Just beating oneself up is not really helpful to yourself or the other person. It's much more important to increase one's mindfulness and just be aware. Am I sowing positive seeds right now or negative seeds with my actions? So just remember that instead of beating yourself up, because if you do that, it's just another ego trip really, right? So the slowing down is what gives us the opportunity to feel that something is really off here in the action that we're about to do or that we just did. And that maybe reminds us, oh, this is really not a good idea, let me not do that, let me refrain from that. And if we can listen to that little voice when we're able to pause, we know whether an action is skillful or unskillful. That moment of pause is really that can bring us in touch with that. Or if we don't, we can then learn from our mistakes and see the lesson in it. And again, just so important, please remember to be kind with yourself. Even if you've made a mistake, we're all human. Even if it happens over and over again, just the first step is always to be mindful about it and to be kind and just to try again. So when we reflect on our skillful actions, on our unskillful actions rather, it's important, like I said, not to be harsh or critical with ourselves, but rather to be mindful without judgment as best as possible. And I know that this can be really difficult, especially if you're one of those people that really have the intention to act with integrity and then happen to blow it again, just like in that personal example that I just gave. It's like, really? This happened again? So just listen to that inner voice that you're giving to yourself and just see if you can soften around the edges a little bit, because it's really not helpful. But it's very conditioned because we've probably heard that voice in our younger years from caregivers or society or teachers or whoever, spiritual leaders sometimes. So just watch for that voice that tells you did bad. So because really what it does, it makes it much harder to forgive ourselves when we have such high standards, and I know that's often been an issue for me. And so if that's so, it's really important to remember to be kind to ourselves. And the good news here really is that if we have this moment of cringing over things that we've done in the past, we are really cringing because we are not that person anymore. And that's also really important to take in, that the key is to recognize how we have grown. So when we have this cringe, oh gosh, I can't believe I did that in the past, but look how I've grown. I'm now having a lot more mindfulness. I'm able to pause. I can be more kind in my speech, actions, and thoughts a lot more times. And it's really important to reflect on that as well, not just on, oh gosh, I did this again. And so really that is what inspires us to stay the course of sowing seeds of kind actions in our lives. And there's a beautiful teaching that the Buddha gave to his son Rahula. I don't know if all of you are aware, but the Buddha left a very rich household, a castle. His father, that lived in this big castle, and the Buddha lived there even and had a wife and a child, and then certain things happened in the Buddha's life that I don't want to go into tonight. There's not enough time, but it guided him on the direction of a spiritual path, and he became a seeker in the forests of India. He became one of the yogis, and then later gained full awakening or full enlightenment. And he came back later to visit his family. He didn't go back to be a husband again, but his young son Rahula, took a lot of interest in this monastic path that the Buddha had taken up, and he actually followed him into the monastic life and became a monk himself, I think at a young age. And so this is just a teaching that I wanted to share on this theme of the evening that the Buddha gave to his son Rahula after his enlightenment. He said to him that See if an action you are about to do is going to lead to suffering or happiness. Don't do it if it causes suffering. But you might not realize it until you are in the midst of the action. Just think to yourself, where is this going? Is it causing suffering or leading to happiness? If it causes suffering, don't do it. But if you might not realize it until after the words have been spoken and the deed is done, in that case, don't beat yourself up. So the Buddha actually said that. Reflect what you can learn from this situation instead of becoming guilty, and rather applying what he called wise remorse. When you feel the pain of the action you have done, but you are wise and commit yourself to act more skillfully in the future. So I think that's a really beautiful teaching that he gave to his son, and applies to all of us, not to his son only. And it's really a very powerful teaching, powerful reflection that communicates, in my opinion, that it's never too late to wake up, that we can always change. And instead of seeing how we have blown it again, like I said earlier, we can reflect on how we can keep on learning year after year, moment after moment. And the more we become mindful, the more we will see when we're off, when we're off in our behaviors, when we acted in an unskillful way. So this evening, for our guided meditation, I would like to offer a meditation on forgiveness and healing. And just take a moment, though, to let all the words settle, and maybe just be with your breath for a minute or so, just settling into your own body and heart. You might wish to take a few deeper and longer breaths, just really stretching open the heart and the mind on the in-breath, and then just softening and relaxing, letting go on the out-breath. And then eventually just allow the breath to find its own natural rhythms, whether it's long or short, deep or shallow, however it manifests in these next breath cycles. And just allowing the mind to rest on the body, just as the body is resting on your cushion or your seat. Keeping a soft connection with your breath. Maybe taking a moment to relax the body a bit more through the eyes and facial muscles, the neck and the shoulders, the chest and the belly softening. Noticing any tightness in the shoulders. Just see if that can dissolve just by bringing some attention to it. Caring and loving attention. Down the spine, all the way into your lower back. A sense of release there. hands, the hips, the pelvis. And relaxing all the way down through the upper legs, the knees, into the lower legs, all the way into your feet. So the whole body in more of a state of relaxation now. And if it still feels tight and tense, that's okay too. Just bringing a loving attention to whatever manifests in your body and mind at this moment. And then imagine that you're breathing in and out from the heart center, the spiritual heart right in the center of the chest. So just connecting with the breath in the middle of the chest area. And see if you can reflect on an incident you still regret or feel guilty about. Something that you've been carrying around that feels heavy in your heart. So just bringing that to mind if you can. And then notice if fear or confusion motivated your words or actions. Perhaps reflecting on what was going on for you at the time that you acted in that way. What were the circumstances of your life? Was there a lot of stress? Something that happened that you were going through a difficult time? Just sort of getting a sense, oh yes, that was going on for me then. And now imagine that another person caused harm in the same way and sincerely expressed their regret. Could you forgive them? And now imagine yourself as a wise and kind being who understands how confusion and fear led you to your actions, and see if you can forgive yourself. See if the wise part of you can understand the confusion or fear that was going on, and forgive your unawareness. Forgive yourself. And just noticing what feelings are up for you in this moment, and just making sure to surround it all with a loving and deeply caring mindfulness and attention. Whatever it is that's coming up for you as a consequence of this practice. And now reflect on what you have learned from this situation. How might you act differently in a similar situation in the future? finally, if it is possible, sincerely, this is something that you might project into the future, see if you can sincerely apologize to the person you have hurt without expecting any particular response. I'm truly sorry I caused you pain or hurt. And you can still do that for yourself, apologizing to the person, even if that person has already passed on, or you no longer have that person in your life for another reason. You can still imagine sincerely apologizing to that person. So I'm going to ring the bell and we're going to spend some time together in silence and meditation, however you would like to spend that time with yourself now. Just allowing, like I said, this caring attention to naturally be part of your meditation experience as you still keep a soft attention on the breath and everything else that might also arise around the breath, like the feelings and thoughts and body sensations. And so at the end of this meditation, I would like to share a piece of writing. You can still keep your eyes closed if you wish. But I would like to share a piece of writing titled Autobiography in 5 Chapters by Portia Nelson. Some of you will have heard this. Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes me forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it is there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It's my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down another street. Thank you for your beautiful practice this evening. It's really nice to see you all here, and I wish I could see you online, but a few of you have just written in. Thank you for that. And we have, you can see David, we have 8 minutes. If there's any questions or comments, feel free. If you want to post something online as well, I'll check. But this is our sharing time that we can learn from one another. So if you wish to say anything, yes?
Yeah, how do you distinguish between doing something skillful versus just people pleasing? Because I people please a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's something really to be mindful about, right? And maybe also to check in. I think in part of the reflection it talks about if an action is based in fear or confusion. I noticed for myself that I certainly grew up in a family situation where there was a lot of people pleasing going on my part to meet the other person's needs. So that's a real growth edge for me. And so that's something to be really, really careful about, to really find a way to grow in a way that helps you express your own needs. And I imagine that there's probably fear related, if you check in with yourself, that could be part of the reason why you want to please, why you are a people pleaser, or maybe fearing their reaction, or maybe not even having a sense that you don't have a right to express your needs. I'm just saying that because I'm aware of that for myself. And so that would probably be not so skillful for yourself, in the sense that the growth edge for you probably is to learn to build the courage in yourself to know that you have enough value, that your needs matter as well, and to be aware of when you go into that type of behavior, what's at work for you. So again, it's just really a mindfulness practice. And then just to notice what it feels like. Or maybe it feels like, this way I don't feel so anxious if I just please people. But if you really check in, there's that unmet need that you maybe denied yourself at the same time. So it's really about being mindful and aware, and being more keenly aware in your practice what's really going on for yourself, and to be, an amount of honesty also, because that's really making yourself really vulnerable, to be in touch with all of those things. And again, just having a lot of compassion for yourself, that it's a process, but that you probably want to get to a place in your life where you can feel good about yourself, where you know that your needs matter. That's big for me, so I feel like I can really speak to that. So, yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Hello everyone. Any advice on shame and guilt? Thanks. Anyone? I'm sure a lot of us can relate. Is there anybody that want to speak about shame and guilt? Yes.
I deal with a lot of shame. That's usually my response
Mm-hmm.
to things. I put a lot of blame on myself. And I think as I've explored my shame and guilt, I've realized for me, shame is attached to who I am as a person. So if I do something wrong or I make a mistake, I say, I'm a bad person. And if I'm able to flip it to a guilt response, it's I made a mistake, but I'm not a bad person. And so a lot of it has not been like the absence of either, but transitioning to be less shame-based and more, I can feel guilty for what I did, but with that comes forgiveness. Because if I associate it with who I am, that's a permanent state. I can never escape that.
Yeah, that's really, thank you for offering that to the group. And I just want to share that all of those feelings are really just feelings. None of them are permanent states. And I think the Buddha probably, instead of using words like shame and guilt, used wise remorse, kind of like, ooh, ouch, I blew it. But it doesn't have anything to do, it's nothing fixed, like this is me, who I am, I'm a bad person. And so I think it's important that even with feeling guilty, I remember years ago, after having left my long-term partner many years, there were just several years where I absolutely beat myself up. I felt so guilty for leaving her. I just couldn't get out of that state. And I was very actively involved in the temple at that time where there was a lot of Dharma sharing. And I remember my friend Grace one night applying a Zen stick, and she just said, enough with your guilt already. Who is it serving? It's not serving your former partner. It's not helping you. Enough already. So it really was a wake-up call for me, that it really was just sort of more of an ego trip, creating suffering, and it wasn't helpful. So I feel like the way that the Buddha phrased it about wise remorse, my dear friend always says that her long-term former partner always said that, ooh, ouch, I blew it. And that sort of really softens it around the edges to be able to say, I blew it, I'm sad I did this, that was really unskillful, but I can move on from here. It's not like, I'm going to be always guilty. This is what, I have to identify with now for the rest of my life. Oh, it's just, it's a feeling that we can soften around, hopefully, so, yeah. Yes?
I would also say that adjective that you use, unskillful, it's much less loaded than saying, oh, I'm a bad person, or there's something inherently awful in this. It was just unskillful. I didn't have the skills. And in another part of your talk, you were mentioning doing things that we often do, these unskillful things, out of confusion and fear. And who cannot relate to that? I mean, we all experience that. And then as we go on, we learn something else. So for me, I comment on the words that are used. I think we can use words that are less loaded, that are gentler, like unskillful, for example.
Right, that's a good point. But I also want to come back to you one more time. Is it Tiffany? Yes. I just want to say, because I've talked a lot about how for some people joy as a word doesn't resonate, maybe it's more contentment or well-being. If that word really helps you to transition from shame and identifying with it and use the word guilt, and it softens it for you, I just want to add that, then great. Then, you're sharing that as your wise reflection. So I feel like I didn't want to take away from you using that word, because it sounds like it really helped you to not identify with the feeling. So I just want to say, I don't want to take that word away from you if that's really the word that works for you. I just wanted to add that. So that's really important. Like you always talk about, it really is about the word. So, yeah.
Yeah, and my comment was more directed to the person online who said,
Yes,
what have
yes,
you got for shame and guilt?
Yes.
I wasn't trying to take away from
No, I wasn't saying that. I felt like I was taking away from Tiffany. I wasn't saying that you were, but I just thought that when I was saying that way, it's taking maybe away from a word away from you that really helped you to transition from identifying or personalizing a certain action. So thank you for sharing that. So, yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
I don't know if this is going to be helpful, but I would say that I'm generally pretty shameless. We got the little yin and yang going over here. And I don't know if this is going to sound like aloof or unrelatable. And I'm also going to say that I'm going to say this being a person who can somewhat easily fall into depressions and have experienced that through my life. But I feel like what has been the most helpful for me is just being kind of light about life. It's not so serious, and life is just an accumulation of experiences, and just being like, oh, maybe I didn't do the best on that one. I can try better next time, but it's whatever. That was one experience, now I'm on to the next. And I don't know, just having a light attitude about life is kind of what has helped me.
Okay. I just want to ask you a question when you talked about the aloofness. What do you sense do you feel like there's a kind of a protection there going on, or just that's sort of what came to me when you said, sort of an aloofness, or is there something that, what is that, what do you feel like that's about for you? Are you in touch with that?
I guess I feel like when I say that, it's easy for people to respond like, oh, you just don't get it. Like, it's too hard,
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's why I said aloof. But.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I need to have a tea with you now to understand better about it, because I don't feel like I'm quite getting it, but yeah.
You can ask more questions. I don't know if I'll do a better job at explaining. I know.
But I hear you say that in general it helps you just to be more lighthearted about, so maybe that's what's related to, but when you use the word aloofness, is that related for you? Mm-hmm. So just not taking things so seriously maybe also helps you from not maybe being so sort of judgmental or identified with certain things? Okay. I'm getting it a little bit more.
Yeah, I guess sometimes it feels like when you're lighthearted, you seem less grounded to others. So, does that help a bit?
You seem less grounded to others?
Well, I don't feel like I'm not grounded, but it seems like people can get that impression when you're lighthearted. But yeah, I don't know another way to explain that.
Yeah, it also depends maybe on the dynamic of the people that you're talking about, that you share with them. So, but I just appreciate that you're sharing about the lightheartedness and how that's helped you. So that's really what matters. So thank you. Destiny, right? Is that correct? Yeah, thank you. Sorry if I stay on if I can, or maybe I'm not sure that I'm getting it completely, but I'm getting it a little bit. So.
I think, well, speaking from me being so shame-based and you not really having that struggle, I think like the disconnection can feel like maybe you don't hear fully my experience.
I see.
And I wish I could feel that.
Okay.
Disattached.
I see.
To, I don't know.
Yeah, and even what I'm sorry, I forgot your name now. Is Nathan, when you talk about being a people pleaser, so maybe the two of you need to be a little bit more like Destiny in a way, maybe more equanimous, lighthearted, And maybe destiny could be maybe a little bit more taking in sort of maybe the impact that she's having. I don't know. That's something for the, I mean, you two are, that's going to be a rich conversation between the two of you. But yeah, it's always maybe bringing those opposite poles together and learning from the other and seeing, oh yeah, if I can move more into the middle here and I move more here, you know, that'll balance that out. That'll be good. Yeah, so you mirror that for one another to, bring that in. So thank you. It's great. Yes, John, I didn't want to forget you.
But I'm counting the time. I see things slightly different.
Okay.
And I hope it maybe add to the conversation. If not, at least it'll straighten up my own brain. You know, guilt and shame. Guilt is more factually based. It was something that was committed or something that was omitted. So it's more, there's no real judgment around guilt. It just is a fact. I did something, or I did not do something.
Okay.
So I'm guilty of this, or not guilty of this.
Okay.
Shame is more of the feeling one has about that particular act.
I see.
And two main types of shame would be healthy shame and toxic shame. So I'm hearing, and not being judgmental, of course, I'm certainly not here, always feeling bad about something is a toxic shame. I am a bad person, therefore I do things that are bad. As opposed to a healthy shame is more, I am a good person, inherently good, but I make mistakes. I am guilty of things sometimes.
That's beautiful.
And then with regards to not feeling or indifference, that I would bring back to an earlier question I was going to pose with regards to living in integrity. I understood, as you said earlier, living in integrity, or with integrity, is living in line with one's beliefs.
Yeah, values, beliefs.
Values and beliefs,
Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
Now, my lack of understanding with that, or I may need more understanding of that, is that Buddhist understanding or moral understanding of belief, or just my own personal understanding of belief? Because my own personal understanding and beliefs could be selfish, could cause suffering. However, if I feel no remorse, no responsibility, then I am living in the highest level of integrity.
That's very true.
A criminal who does bad things, who hurts someone for their own personal gain, feels that they are doing the correct thing in life.
Right,
I must
right.
increase my own gain. I must make sure that no one else can attack me.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
And that would so.
Yes.
I would maybe say that that's, you know, again, wordsmithing thing. Maybe integrity. I think we should say maybe there is a moral code for it or something, and because otherwise it gives one a license to do whatever they want to do.
Exactly, and I think it's more meant, because I had those same thoughts also about integrity, and I think, at least from the Buddhist perspective, it's always about wanting to live a life that is as best as possible, living a life that is not based in harming another being. And so it goes beyond, like you said, one's own personal values, because they could be values of someone that doesn't have any, moral character or standing or anything, and just, that's my belief or my values, and I can do whatever. So it is more based in a moral code, or at least based in non-harming. From a Buddhist perspective, it would be based in non-harming. Maybe from a Catholic perspective, it would be based in something else. But yes, it goes beyond just one's own values. Well, I agree with you.
And then in that non-harming, is that a desire to not do any harm? Because certainly we are all guilty and be harmed.
Absolutely.
Even the Dalai Lama said something recently that offended people. He did not mean to.
It always boils down to the intention, and the intention to cause no harm. And I think just sitting here and breathing, or stepping on a worm when it rains, or a snail, we can just bring the intention not to harm to the best of our abilities. We can actually prevent harm altogether. So, yeah.
But we will fall short and be guilty because we are imperfect.
Yes, you're right. And then the guilt, like you said, doesn't come with I'm a terrible person. It just acknowledges, okay, I have remorse for what happened here, and let me realign with my intentions to not harm to the best of my abilities. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing
Thank you.
that. Okay. I think it's time for David to come up with his wisdom. And if you can face him closer to the camera so that you can be you're becoming star, so. Last time I didn't see you on the video, so I think you need to be, yeah, there, so people can see you. Here you go.
I'll keep it brief. So I did like your story about the street and the hole, because I have a very colorful past. For those who, well, none of you know that, but I have a very colorful past, and I walked down that same street for a long time, and I think I'm on a different street right now. And as regard to giving to others you don't know, actually no one knows that I do this, but I do little things. I have a little Ziplocs of dog food in my car. I have 3 vehicles, they all have dog food. So when I see a homeless person with a dog, I give them dog food. So I don't feel the same level of joy as remorse when I do something bad, but I think it's a muscle that I'm trying to build out. So, just one bag of dog food is $20. You get lots of little bags. Anyone can do it. I'm just saying. Okay, with that, if you don't know, my name is David. I'm your host tonight. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple up 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not monks, gurus, priests, teachers, nuns. They're not looking for students. They're just sharing their experience. A practitioner sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night there are different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. There's a recovery sangha for anyone struggling with addiction of any kind. Most nights actually here, most days of the week. As was mentioned, there's a food redistribution program. Every Thursday at 4:30 downstairs, they make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and if you're inclined, you can hand them out downtown to those who sleep on the street every night. So if you think your life is not going well, it puts it in perspective. There's a full schedule of everything that we offer outside above the shoe rack. It's also on the website. There's a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to take it and just bring it back when you're done. Please straighten up your chair or cushion, and thank you for being here. We will see you again soon.
Thank you, and have a safe way, find a safe way home. Thank you so much for